There comes a moment in every person's life when they stand at the crossroads of destiny. Not the kind of crossroads marked by street signs or GPS coordinates, but the invisible intersection where dreams meet reality, where potential confronts possibility, where the whispered promises of what could be clash with the thunderous roar of what is. In that moment, everything hinges on one thing: not talent, not luck, not the circumstances of your birth or the advantages handed to you on silver platters. It comes down to something far more powerful, far more fundamental, far more within your control than any external force could ever be. It comes down to your ability to make a decision and follow through. Listen carefully, because what I'm about to tell you will separate you from the masses who drift through life like leaves in an autumn wind, carried by every passing breeze, never choosing their destination, never claiming their power. The difference between those who achieve greatness and those who settle for mediocrity isn't intelligence. It isn't even opportunity. It's the willingness to make a definitive choice and then burn the bridges behind them so that retreat becomes impossible. Thomas Edison didn't stumble into greatness. When he decided to create the incandescent light bulb, he wasn't making a casual suggestion to the universe. He was making a declaration of war against darkness itself. And when he failed the first time, the 10th time, the 100th time, the 1000th time, he didn't waver in his decision. He didn't hedge his bets or keep backup plans tucked safely in his pocket. He had decided, and that decision became the gravitational force around which every action, every thought, every moment of his existence orbited. That's what real decision-making looks like. It's not the casual "I'll try" or "I'll see what happens" that most people mistake for commitment. It's the kind of decision that reorganizes your DNA, that rewrites the software of your mind, that transforms you at the cellular level from someone who hopes into someone who knows. But here's where most people stumble, where most dreams go to die in the graveyard of good intentions. They make the decision, feel the rush of possibility, taste the sweetness of potential victory, and then they stop. They make the decision but fail to follow through. They plant the seed but refuse to tend the garden. They start the engine but never put the car in drive. Following through isn't just the second step in a two-step process. Following through is where the real magic happens. It's where the invisible becomes visible, where thoughts transform into things, where the blueprint in your mind becomes the skyscraper touching the clouds. Henry Ford made a decision that seemed impossible to everyone around him. He decided to create a horseless carriage that every American could afford. Not just the wealthy, not just the privileged, everyone. His advisors told him it couldn't be done. His engineers said the technology didn't exist. The market research suggested there was no demand. But Ford had made his decision, and more importantly, he understood something that his critics didn't. Following through means continuing to move forward even when the path disappears beneath your feet. When Ford encountered obstacles, he didn't see roadblocks. He saw puzzles to solve. When his first attempts failed, he didn't interpret failure as a sign to quit. He interpreted it as valuable data for his next attempt. When people said it couldn't be done, he didn't argue with them or try to convince them. He simply continued following through on his decision until the Model T rolled off the assembly line and changed the world forever. If you're ready to master the power of decision and follow through in your own life, write "I decide" and "I follow through" in the comments below. Claim this power for yourself. The mind is a fascinating instrument, more complex than any computer ever built, more powerful than any machine ever conceived. But like any instrument, its power depends entirely on how you choose to use it. When you make a decision and follow through, you're not just changing your external circumstances, you're reprogramming the very operating system of your consciousness. Every thought you think, every action you take, every choice you make is either reinforcing your identity as someone who follows through or someone who gives up. There is no neutral ground. There is no middle position. You're either training yourself to be the kind of person who finishes what they start, or you're training yourself to be the kind of person who collects half-finished projects like broken promises to yourself. Walt Disney understood this principle better than perhaps anyone in history. When he decided to create Disneyland, he wasn't just deciding to build an amusement park. He was deciding to reshape reality itself, to create a place where imagination could walk around in 3 dimensions, where dreams could be touched and tasted and experienced. But Disney's real genius wasn't in the decision itself. His genius was in his unwavering commitment to follow through, even when every logical indicator suggested he should quit. When he ran out of money, he didn't give up, he found more money. When construction problems threatened to destroy the project, he didn't abandon ship, he solved the problems. When opening day arrived and nothing was working properly, with unfinished attractions and landscaping that looked more like a construction zone than a magical kingdom, he didn't close the gates in embarrassment. He opened them anyway and continued following through on his vision until it became the reality we know today. This is the secret that separates dreamers from achievers. Dreamers fall in love with the decision, but achievers fall in love with the follow-through. Dreamers get excited about the destination, but achievers get excited about the journey. Dreamers focus on the end result, but achievers focus on the next step. Abraham Lincoln made a decision that would define not just his legacy, but the soul of a nation. He decided to preserve the Union and end slavery, even if it meant tearing the country apart to put it back together again. But Lincoln's greatness wasn't in making that decision. Lots of people had made similar decisions before him. Lincoln's greatness was in his absolute, unwavering commitment to follow through, no matter what the cost. When the Civil War began and the casualties mounted, Lincoln didn't waver. When his own party turned against him, when the press attacked him mercilessly, when defeat seemed inevitable and his advisors begged him to negotiate a compromise that would preserve slavery in some form, Lincoln continued following through on his original decision. He understood that the power of a decision isn't in the moment you make it. The power is in every moment afterward when you choose to honor it. The human mind is wired to seek comfort, to avoid pain, to choose the path of least resistance. This isn't a flaw in your programming. It's a feature designed to keep you alive in a world where survival was never guaranteed. But in the modern world, this ancient wiring can become the very thing that prevents you from achieving the life you truly want. When you make a decision to change your life, to pursue a dream, to build something meaningful, your mind will immediately begin generating reasons why it's too difficult, too risky, too unlikely to succeed. This isn't your mind trying to sabotage you. This is your mind trying to protect you from the discomfort of growth, from the uncertainty of change, from the vulnerability of putting yourself on the line. But here's what most people don't understand. These mental resistance patterns aren't signals that you've made the wrong decision. They're signals that you've made a decision powerful enough to trigger your mind's defense mechanisms. They're proof that you're on the right track. Andrew Carnegie built his steel empire not because he was immune to doubt and fear, but because he learned to follow through on his decisions even when doubt and fear were screaming at him to stop. Every time his mind generated reasons to quit, Carnegie interpreted those thoughts not as truth, but as noise. Every time fear suggested he was in over his head, Carnegie responded by taking one more step forward. Carnegie understood something that escapes most people. The voice in your head that tells you to quit isn't the voice of wisdom, it's the voice of limitation. It's the voice of the person you used to be, trying desperately to pull you back to the safety of the person you've always been. But you're not trying to remain the person you've always been. You're trying to become the person you're capable of being. The Wright brothers didn't succeed in creating the first airplane because they were better engineers than everyone else attempting flight. They succeeded because they made a decision to solve the problem of human flight and then followed through with a systematic persistence that their competitors couldn't match. While others made grand announcements and spectacular attempts, the Wright brothers quietly, methodically, relentlessly followed through on their decision, learning from each failure, adjusting their approach, never abandoning their commitment to their original choice. On December 17, 1903, when their aircraft lifted off the ground at Kitty Hawk for 12 seconds of powered flight, they weren't celebrating a moment of inspiration. They were celebrating years of following through on a decision that everyone else had given up on. Your dreams are waiting for the same kind of commitment. Your goals are waiting for the same kind of persistence. Your potential is waiting for you to stop treating your decisions like suggestions and start treating them like sacred vows to yourself. But following through isn't just about external action. The most important follow-through happens in the privacy of your own mind, in the moments when no one is watching, when no one would know if you gave up, when the only person you'd be betraying is yourself. Every morning when you wake up, you have a choice. You can recommit to the decisions you made when you were inspired, when you were motivated, when you were feeling strong and clear and certain. Or you can listen to the voice that suggests maybe today isn't the right day, maybe you should start fresh tomorrow, maybe the decision you made wasn't as important as you thought it was. These small, seemingly insignificant moments of choice are where your future is actually determined, not in the dramatic moments when you make big decisions surrounded by excitement and possibility, but in the quiet moments when you choose whether or not to honor those decisions, when honoring them requires effort, discomfort, sacrifice, faith. Theodore Roosevelt understood this principle when he articulated his philosophy of the strenuous life. Roosevelt believed that character was built not in moments of ease and comfort, but in moments when following through required you to reach beyond what you thought you were capable of. When Roosevelt decided to charge up San Juan Hill, he wasn't just making a military tactical decision. He was following through on a lifetime commitment to face fear directly, to choose action over safety, to honor his decisions regardless of the personal cost. If you're ready to choose the strenuous path of following through on your deepest commitments, write "I choose the difficult path of greatness" in the comments. This is your commitment to yourself. The Wright brothers didn't succeed in creating the first airplane because they were better engineers than everyone else attempting flight. They succeeded because they made a decision to solve the problem of human flight and then followed through with a systematic persistence that their competitors couldn't match. While others made grand announcements and spectacular attempts, the Wright brothers quietly, methodically, relentlessly followed through on their decision, learning from each failure, adjusting their approach, never abandoning their commitment to their original choice. On December 17, 1903, when their aircraft lifted off the ground at Kitty Hawk for 12 seconds of powered flight, they weren't celebrating a moment of inspiration. They were celebrating years of following through on a decision that everyone else had given up on. Your dreams are waiting for the same kind of commitment. Your goals are waiting for the same kind of persistence. Your potential is waiting for you to stop treating your decisions like suggestions and start treating them like sacred vows to yourself. But following through isn't just about external action. The most important follow-through happens in the privacy of your own mind, in the moments when no one is watching, when no one would know if you gave up, when the only person you'd be betraying is yourself. Every morning when you wake up, you have a choice. You can recommit to the decisions you made when you were inspired, when you were motivated, when you were feeling strong and clear and certain. Or you can listen to the voice that suggests maybe today isn't the right day, maybe you should start fresh tomorrow, maybe the decision you made wasn't as important as you thought it was. These small, seemingly insignificant moments of choice are where your future is actually determined. Not in the dramatic moments when you make big decisions surrounded by excitement and possibility, but in the quiet moments when you choose whether or not to honor those decisions, when honoring them requires effort, discomfort, sacrifice, faith. Theodore Roosevelt understood this principle when he articulated his philosophy of the strenuous life. Roosevelt believed that character was built not in moments of ease and comfort, but in moments when following through required you to reach beyond what you thought you were capable of. When Roosevelt decided to charge up San Juan Hill, he wasn't just making a military tactical decision. He was following through on a lifetime commitment to face fear directly, to choose action over safety, to honor his decisions regardless of the personal cost. If you're ready to choose the strenuous path of following through on your deepest commitments, write "I choose the difficult path of greatness" in the comments. This is your commitment to yourself. The subconscious mind is perhaps the most powerful force available to human beings, but it's also the most misunderstood. Most people think the subconscious is something that happens to them, something beyond their control, something that operates according to mysterious rules they can never fully comprehend. But the truth is far more empowering. Your subconscious mind is not your master, it's your most faithful servant. It will work tirelessly to bring about whatever you consistently focus on, whatever you repeatedly affirm through your thoughts and actions, whatever you demonstrate genuine commitment to through your follow-through. When you make a decision and then immediately begin second-guessing yourself, changing course, looking for easier alternatives, you're training your subconscious mind to expect inconsistency. You're programming it to prepare backup plans rather than focusing all its considerable power on your primary objective. But when you make a decision and then follow through with unwavering consistency, when you take action every single day in alignment with your chosen direction, when you refuse to entertain thoughts of quitting or settling for less, you're programming your subconscious mind for success. You're teaching it to organize all its resources around making your decision inevitable. Napoleon Bonaparte understood this principle when he declared that he would rather have a general who was lucky than a general who was brilliant. What Napoleon recognized was that luck is often nothing more than the result of unwavering commitment to a decision. When you follow through consistently on a clear decision, you create what appears to be luck, but is actually the natural result of focused intention meeting prepared opportunity. When Napoleon decided to conquer Europe, he didn't hope for favorable circumstances. He created favorable circumstances through relentless follow-through. When obstacles appeared, he found ways around them. When enemies emerged, he found ways to defeat them. When resources were scarce, he found ways to acquire them. To outside observers, Napoleon appeared to be extraordinarily lucky, but Napoleon knew the truth. He wasn't lucky, he was committed. This same principle applies to every area of your life. When you decide to build a business and follow through with consistent daily action, opportunities begin appearing that seem like luck but are actually the natural result of your focused effort. When you decide to improve your health and follow through with consistent daily habits, your body begins responding in ways that seem miraculous but are actually the predictable result of aligned action. The challenge is that this process doesn't happen overnight. The subconscious mind doesn't reorganize itself instantly. Following through requires you to maintain faith in your decision, even when external evidence suggests it's not working, even when progress is invisible, even when logic suggests you should try a different approach. This is where most people fail. They expect following through to produce immediate results, and when those results don't materialize on their preferred timeline, they interpret the delay as evidence that their decision was wrong. They abandon their commitment just before the breakthrough, just before the tipping point, just before all their consistent effort would have paid off in visible, undeniable results. Thomas Edison's 10,000 failures weren't 10,000 wrong decisions. They were 10,000 steps in the process of following through on one right decision. Every failed experiment brought Edison closer to success, not because failure is magical, but because following through means using every experience as information, every setback as education, every obstacle as training for the persistence required to achieve something truly significant. The marketplace is filled with people who made good decisions but failed to follow through. The graveyard of abandoned dreams is populated not by people who made bad choices, but by people who made good choices and then abandoned them when following through became difficult, uncomfortable, uncertain. But the marketplace is also home to people who made decisions that seemed impossible and then followed through until impossibility became inevitability. These people aren't fundamentally different from anyone else. They don't possess special powers or unique advantages. They simply understand that decision-making and following through aren't separate activities. They're two parts of the same process. When Steve Jobs decided to create the iPhone, he wasn't just deciding to make a phone. He was deciding to revolutionize human communication. But more importantly, he was committing to follow through on that decision even when his team told him the technology wasn't ready, even when the cost seemed prohibitive, even when the timeline seemed impossible. Jobs followed through by demanding perfection when perfection seemed unreasonable. He followed through by refusing to compromise on his vision when compromise seemed sensible. He followed through by continuing to push forward when everyone around him wanted to settle for good enough. The iPhone didn't succeed because Jobs made a lucky guess about what people wanted. The iPhone succeeded because Jobs made a decision and then followed through with the kind of relentless commitment that transforms vision into reality. Your decisions are waiting for the same level of commitment. Your dreams are waiting for the same quality of follow-through. Your potential is waiting for you to stop treating your choices like experiments and start treating them like sacred contracts with your future self. The person you're capable of becoming isn't hoping you'll follow through on your decisions. That person is counting on it. That person is depending on your ability to bridge the gap between who you are today and who you've decided to become. That person can't exist without your commitment to following through, day after day, choice after choice, moment after moment. But here's the beautiful truth. Every time you honor a commitment to yourself, every time you follow through when following through is difficult, every time you choose long-term vision over short-term comfort, you're not just moving closer to your goals. You're becoming the kind of person who achieves their goals. You're developing the character that makes success inevitable rather than accidental. The power of decision-making and following through isn't just about accomplishing specific objectives. It's about becoming the person who has the power to accomplish any objective they choose. It's about developing unshakable confidence in your own reliability, in your own character, in your own ability to make your word mean something in a world where most people's words mean nothing. When you consistently follow through on your decisions, you develop what psychologists call self-efficacy, the deep, unshakable belief that you can figure out how to achieve whatever you set your mind to. This isn't arrogance or delusion. This is the natural result of repeatedly proving to yourself that you can be counted on, that your decisions have weight, that your commitment has power. Alexander Graham Bell didn't invent the telephone because he was the smartest man in America. He invented the telephone because he made a decision to solve the problem of long-distance communication and then followed through with systematic persistence that his competitors couldn't match. When technical challenges emerged, Bell didn't see them as evidence that his decision was wrong. He saw them as puzzles to solve. When financial pressures mounted, he didn't see them as reasons to quit. He saw them as obstacles to overcome. On March 10, 1876, when Bell spoke the first words ever transmitted by telephone, "Mr. Watson, come here, I want to see you," he wasn't celebrating a moment of inspiration. He was celebrating years of following through on a decision that everyone else had abandoned. The same pattern appears in every field of human achievement. Someone makes a decision that seems unreasonable to everyone else. They encounter obstacles that would stop most people. They face criticism that would discourage most people. They experience failures that would defeat most people. But they continue following through because they understand that success isn't about avoiding obstacles. Success is about following through despite obstacles. Michael Jordan didn't become the greatest basketball player of all time because he was naturally gifted. He became great because he made a decision to be great and then followed through with practice habits that his competitors thought were excessive. When Jordan was cut from his high school basketball team, he didn't interpret that rejection as evidence that his decision was unrealistic. He interpreted it as information about how much work he needed to do. Jordan followed through by being the first person to arrive at practice and the last person to leave. He followed through by treating every drill like it was game-winning shot in the championship. He followed through by demanding excellence from himself even when no one was watching, especially when no one was watching. Championships aren't won during games. Championships are won during the countless hours of preparation, when following through means doing what needs to be done, whether you feel like it or not. Jordan understood that his competitors were equally talented, equally motivated during games. What separated him was his willingness to follow through when following through wasn't fun, wasn't exciting, wasn't glamorous. This principle applies to every dream worth pursuing. The difference between those who achieve their dreams and those who abandon them isn't talent or luck or circumstances. The difference is the willingness to follow through when following through requires you to do what you don't want to do when you don't want to do it because you committed to doing it. Following through means keeping promises to yourself even when no one else knows you made those promises. Following through means honoring your commitments even when your commitments require sacrifice. Following through means choosing your future self over your present comfort, your long-term vision over your short-term desires, your deepest values over your immediate impulses. But the reward for this kind of commitment isn't just external achievement. The reward is becoming someone you can trust completely, someone you can count on absolutely, someone whose word to themselves means everything. The reward is developing unshakable confidence in your own character, in your own reliability, in your own power to make things happen through the simple but profound act of deciding and following through. The world is full of people who dream about what they want to achieve. The world is full of people who talk about what they plan to do. The world is full of people who make resolutions and set goals and create vision boards and attend seminars about success. But the world has very few people who make decisions and follow through regardless of circumstances, regardless of obstacles, regardless of setbacks, regardless of criticism, regardless of how long it takes or how difficult it becomes. These are the people who shape the world. These are the people who turn impossibilities into realities. These are the people who prove that human beings are capable of far more than most people dare to imagine. You have the same capacity. You have the same potential. You have the same power to make decisions and follow through until those decisions become the reality you experience every day. The question isn't whether you're capable of decision-making and following through. The question is whether you're willing to develop that capacity through practice, through commitment, through the daily choice to honor your decisions even when honoring them is difficult. Your future is waiting for your answer. Your dreams are waiting for your commitment. Your potential is waiting for you to stop treating your decisions like wishes and start treating them like sacred vows to the person you're becoming. The power is in your hands. The choice is yours. The moment is now. Championships aren't won during games. Championships are won during the countless hours of preparation, when following through means doing what needs to be done, whether you feel like it or not. Jordan understood that his competitors were equally talented, equally motivated during games. What separated him was his willingness to follow through when following through wasn't fun, wasn't exciting, wasn't glamorous. This principle applies to every dream worth pursuing. The difference between those who achieve their dreams and those who abandon them isn't talent or luck or circumstances. The difference is the willingness to follow through when following through requires you to do what you don't want to do when you don't want to do it because you committed to doing it. Following through means keeping promises to yourself even when no one else knows you made those promises. Following through means honoring your commitments even when your commitments require sacrifice. Following through means choosing your future self over your present comfort, your long-term vision over your short-term desires, your deepest values over your immediate impulses. But the reward for this kind of commitment isn't just external achievement. The reward is becoming someone you can trust completely, someone you can count on absolutely, someone whose word to themselves means everything. The reward is developing unshakable confidence in your own character, in your own reliability, in your own power to make things happen through the simple but profound act of deciding and following through. The world is full of people who dream about what they want to achieve. The world is full of people who talk about what they plan to do. The world is full of people who make resolutions and set goals and create vision boards and attend seminars about success. But the world has very few people who make decisions and follow through regardless of circumstances, regardless of obstacles, regardless of setbacks, regardless of criticism, regardless of how long it takes or how difficult it becomes. These are the people who shape the world. These are the people who turn impossibilities into realities. These are the people who prove that human beings are capable of far more than most people dare to imagine. You have the same capacity. You have the same potential. You have the same power to make decisions and follow through until those decisions become the reality you experience every day. The question isn't whether you're capable of decision-making and following through. The question is whether you're willing to develop that capacity through practice, through commitment, through the daily choice to honor your decisions even when honoring them is difficult. Your future is waiting for your answer. Your dreams are waiting for your commitment. Your potential is waiting for you to stop treating your decisions like wishes and start treating them like sacred vows to the person you're becoming. The power is in your hands. The choice is yours. The moment is now. Make your decision, then follow through until that decision becomes your reality. Follow through until impossibility becomes inevitability. Follow through until your dreams become your daily experience. This is your time. This is your moment. This is your opportunity to join the ranks of those who don't just dream about greatness, but who achieve greatness through the simple, profound power of deciding and following through. If you're ready to make this commitment to yourself, if you're ready to join the ranks of those who follow through no matter what, write, "I am committed to my breakthrough" in the comments below. This is your moment. This is your decision. This is your time to follow through. The power of decision-making and following through isn't just a strategy for success. It's a way of life. It's a commitment to becoming the person who can be counted on, especially by yourself. It's a choice to live with intention rather than accident, with purpose rather than drift, with power rather than helplessness. Your life is waiting for you to claim that power. Your dreams are waiting for you to make that choice. Your future is waiting for you to decide and follow through. The time for waiting is over. The time for hoping is finished. The time for wishing has passed. The time for deciding and following through is now. Mastering the inner game. How to win the battle in your mind. There is a war being waged inside your mind every single day. It's not a war you asked for. It's not a war you can see. It's not a war that makes headlines or gets reported on the evening news. But it is the most important war you will ever fight, because the outcome of this internal battle determines everything else in your life. On one side stands the person you are capable of becoming. Bold, confident, unstoppable, aligned with purpose and power. On the other side stands every fear you've ever entertained, every doubt you've ever harbored, every limiting belief you've ever accepted as truth. These forces clash in the arena of your consciousness every moment of every day, and the victor of this battle determines not just what you achieve, but who you become. Most people surrender this war before they even realize they're fighting it. They hand over the keys to their kingdom to the enemy forces of self-doubt and fear without even putting up a fight. They accept the whispered lies of limitation as if they were sacred scripture, allowing thoughts that diminish them to occupy the throne room of their consciousness like conquered territory. But you're not most people. You're here because something inside you recognizes that this internal battle is winnable, that the fortress of your mind can be reclaimed, that the voice of limitation that currently holds court in your head is not your true voice at all. The greatest achievers in human history understood something that escapes the masses. External success is nothing more than the manifestation of internal mastery. Before Henry Ford revolutionized transportation, he had to win the battle against the voice in his head that whispered, "It can't be done." Before Thomas Edison illuminated the world, he had to conquer the internal critic that suggested he was wasting his time after each failed experiment. Before Walt Disney created a magical kingdom, he had to defeat the fear that told him his dreams were too big, too impossible, too childish for a grown man to pursue. These titans of achievement weren't born with special immunity to self-doubt and fear. They were born with the same mental programming as everyone else, the same ancient survival mechanisms designed to keep them safe, small, and satisfied with mediocrity. What made them different wasn't the absence of internal resistance. What made them different was their refusal to let that resistance make decisions for them. The human mind is the most sophisticated computer ever created, capable of processing millions of pieces of information simultaneously, capable of solving complex problems and generating creative solutions that seem to come from nowhere. But this same magnificent instrument can become your greatest enemy if you don't understand how to program it, how to direct it, how to ensure that it serves your highest aspirations rather than your deepest fears. Every thought you think is either building the person you want to become or reinforcing the person you're trying to leave behind. There is no neutral ground in the territory of the mind. Every mental habit you entertain is either strengthening your confidence or feeding your doubt. Every internal conversation you have is either programming you for success or programming you for limitation. The tragedy is that most people are completely unconscious of this programming process. They allow random thoughts to stream through their consciousness like they're watching television, never realizing that they have the power to change the channel, to select what content their mind consumes, to determine which voices get the microphone in the theater of their awareness. Napoleon Hill spent decades studying the mental habits of the most successful people of his era, and what he discovered was revolutionary. These individuals had learned to exercise conscious control over their thoughts. They had mastered what Hill called autosuggestion, the ability to deliberately feed their subconscious mind with thoughts and beliefs that aligned with their goals rather than their fears. But autosuggestion isn't just positive thinking or feel-good affirmations whispered without conviction. Autosuggestion is the systematic replacement of limiting mental programming with empowering mental programming. It's the deliberate choice to think thoughts that serve your vision rather than thoughts that sabotage it. If you're ready to take conscious control of your mental programming and stop letting fear make decisions for your life, write "I control my thoughts don't control me" in the comments below. The subconscious mind is perhaps the most powerful force available to human beings, but it operates according to principles that most people never learn. Your subconscious doesn't judge whether the thoughts you feed it are true or false, helpful or harmful, empowering or limiting. It simply accepts whatever you consistently focus on as reality and then works tirelessly to make that mental reality your external experience. This is why two people can face identical circumstances and have completely different outcomes. One person's subconscious has been programmed with thoughts of possibility, resilience, and resourcefulness. The other person's subconscious has been programmed with thoughts of limitation, victimhood, and scarcity. The circumstances don't determine the outcome. The mental programming determines the outcome. Andrew Carnegie understood this principle when he created his steel empire from nothing. Carnegie didn't start with advantages or capital or connections. What he started with was the unshakable belief that he could figure out how to succeed regardless of obstacles. While his competitors focused on all the reasons why their industry was difficult, why competition was fierce, why success was unlikely, Carnegie programmed his mind with a different message: "I will find a way or make one." This wasn't naive optimism or wishful thinking. This was strategic mental programming. Carnegie recognized that his mind would work tirelessly to prove whatever he consistently believed to be true. So he chose to believe something that would serve his goals rather than something that would sabotage them. Every morning, Carnegie would spend time deliberately focusing on his vision of success, visualizing his goals as already accomplished, feeling the emotions associated with achieving his dreams. He wasn't just daydreaming. He was programming his subconscious mind to organize all its considerable resources around making his vision inevitable rather than impossible. But Carnegie's real genius was in his understanding of the power of repetition. He knew that transforming mental programming required consistency, not intensity. It wasn't enough to think empowering thoughts once in a while when he felt motivated. He had to think empowering thoughts every single day, especially when he didn't feel motivated, especially when circumstances seemed to contradict his vision, especially when the voice of doubt was loudest. This is where most people fail in their attempt to master the inner game. They try to change decades of limiting mental programming with a few days of positive thinking. They expect their subconscious mind to completely reorganize itself based on casual, inconsistent effort. They want the benefits of mental mastery without the discipline of daily mental training. But the subconscious mind doesn't respond to occasional inspiration. It responds to consistent repetition. It doesn't care how you feel about the thoughts you're feeding it. It only cares how often you feed them and how much conviction you bring to the process. John D. Rockefeller became the wealthiest man in American history not because he was born into wealth, but because he programmed his mind for wealth. Every day, Rockefeller would visualize himself as successful, would think thoughts of abundance, would feel the emotions associated with prosperity. When others saw obstacles, Rockefeller's programmed mind saw opportunities. When others saw reasons to quit, Rockefeller's programmed mind saw reasons to persist. Rockefeller understood that the battle for success was won or lost in the privacy of his own thoughts, in moments when no one was watching, when no external pressure existed to think positively. He won the inner game by treating his mental programming as seriously as he treated his business strategy, by giving as much attention to the thoughts he was thinking as he gave to the deals he was making. The voice of limitation in your head isn't telling you the truth about your capabilities. It's telling you the truth about your current programming. When that voice says you're not smart enough, it's not making an assessment of your intelligence. It's revealing the beliefs that have been programmed into your subconscious through years of conditioning. When that voice says success isn't possible for someone like you, it's not predicting your future, it's projecting your past. But here's the empowering truth: programming can be changed. The voice of limitation that seems so authoritative, so convincing, so permanent, is actually just the echo of old programming that you accepted when you didn't know you had a choice. That voice isn't the real you, it's the programmed you. And programming can be overwritten. Theodore Roosevelt faced this battle when he transformed himself from a sickly, weak child into one of the most dynamic leaders in American history. The voice in Roosevelt's head told him he was too frail, too weak, too sickly to amount to anything significant. Every physical challenge seemed to confirm this internal narrative. Every setback seemed to prove that the voice of limitation was right. But Roosevelt made a conscious decision to reject that programming. He began feeding his mind with thoughts of strength, courage, and capability. He visualized himself as powerful and healthy. He repeated affirmations of vitality and vigor. Most importantly, he aligned his actions with his new mental programming, engaging in physical challenges that forced his subconscious mind to update its assessment of what was possible for him. Roosevelt's transformation wasn't the result of a single moment of inspiration. It was the result of thousands of moments when he chose to think thoughts that served his vision rather than thoughts that reinforced his limitations. He won the inner game by refusing to let his current circumstances determine his mental programming, by insisting on programming his mind based on what he wanted to become rather than what he had always been. This is the secret that separates those who break through limitations from those who remain trapped by them. Breakthrough happens in the mind before it happens in reality. External transformation is always preceded by internal transformation. You don't change your life by changing your circumstances. You change your life by changing your mental programming, and then your circumstances change to match your new internal reality. The battle in your mind is fierce because the stakes are so high. The voice of limitation fights so hard to maintain control because it knows that if you discover your true power, if you realize that you can consciously direct your thoughts rather than being directed by them, if you understand that you can program your subconscious mind for success rather than limitation, everything changes. Alexander Graham Bell faced this internal battle when he decided to invent the telephone. The voice of limitation told him that transmitting voice over long distances was impossible, that he lacked the technical expertise, that smarter men had already failed at similar attempts. Every failed experiment seemed to confirm these doubts. Every technical challenge seemed to prove that the critics were right. But Bell had learned to distinguish between the voice of limitation and the voice of possibility. He recognized that the thoughts telling him to quit weren't truth. They were simply mental programming inherited from a world that had never seen a telephone. He chose to reprogram his mind with thoughts of success, possibility, and inevitable breakthrough. Bell spent time each day visualizing successful transmission of voice, feeling the emotions associated with solving the problem, imagining the impact his invention would have on human communication. He wasn't escaping reality through fantasy. He was programming his subconscious mind to organize all its creative resources around finding solutions rather than focusing on obstacles. When Bell spoke those first words over his primitive telephone, "Mr. Watson, come here, I want to see you," he wasn't just transmitting sound waves. He was proving that the inner game could be won, that mental programming was more powerful than external circumstances, that the voice of possibility could overrule the voice of limitation when backed by consistent, conscious direction. If you're committed to reprogramming your mind for success and refusing to let the voice of limitation make decisions for your future, write "I choose possibility over limitation" in the comments below. The most insidious aspect of mental programming is that it feels like truth. The voice in your head that tells you success isn't possible for someone with your background, your education, your circumstances doesn't sound like programming. It sounds like realistic assessment. It doesn't feel like limitation. It feels like wisdom. This is why so many intelligent, capable people remain stuck in patterns that don't serve them. They mistake the voice of their programming for the voice of truth. They accept thoughts that diminish them as if those thoughts were facts rather than fiction. They surrender their power to create their reality because they don't recognize that they have that power. But every limitation you've ever accepted as truth about yourself is nothing more than a thought that you've repeated so many times that it feels permanent. Every belief that restricts your potential is nothing more than programming that was installed when you were too young, too inexperienced, too uninformed to recognize that you had the power to reject it. The good news is that what was programmed can be reprogrammed. What was learned can be unlearned. What was installed can be updated. Your mind is not a fixed system. It's a dynamic, flexible, responsive instrument that changes based on how you use it. Oprah Winfrey understood this when she transformed herself from a poverty-stricken, abused child into one of the most influential media personalities in history. The programming Winfrey inherited from her early experiences told her she was worthless, powerless, destined for failure. The voice of limitation had plenty of evidence to support its case, but Winfrey recognized that she had a choice. She could continue operating from the mental programming of her past, or she could consciously install new programming aligned with her vision of what was possible. She chose possibility over limitation, potential over past, vision over victim mentality. Winfrey's transformation began with the recognition that her thoughts were not facts, that the voice of limitation in her head was not her true voice, that she had the power to consciously choose which thoughts to entertain and which thoughts to reject. She began the systematic process of reprogramming her mind with thoughts of worth, capability, and unlimited potential. This wasn't a one-time decision. It was a daily discipline. Every morning, Winfrey would spend time consciously directing her thoughts toward her goals, visualizing her success, feeling the emotions associated with achieving her dreams. When the voice of limitation tried to reassert control, when circumstances seemed to confirm her old programming, when others treated her according to their expectations rather than her potential, Winfrey would return to the practice of conscious mental programming. Winfrey's success wasn't the result of lucky breaks or favorable circumstances. Her success was the result of winning the inner game, of refusing to let mental programming inherited from her past determine her future, of understanding that her mind was her most powerful tool and treating it accordingly. The voice of limitation in your head is not your friend. It doesn't speak to you from wisdom or experience or realistic assessment of your capabilities. It speaks to you from fear, from the primitive survival mechanisms that are designed to keep you safe but not to help you soar. It speaks from the programming of a world that benefits when you stay small, when you doubt your power, when you accept limitation as truth rather than recognizing it as choice. Every great achievement in human history began with someone winning the battle against this voice. Every breakthrough, every innovation, every transformation started with an individual who refused to let mental programming determine their reality, who chose to program their mind for success rather than accepting programming that guaranteed limitation. Martin Luther King Jr. faced this internal battle when he decided to dedicate his life to civil rights. The voice of limitation told him that change was impossible, that the forces arrayed against him were too powerful, that one man couldn't make a difference against centuries of entrenched injustice. The evidence seemed overwhelming. The obstacles seemed insurmountable. But King had learned to listen to a different voice, the voice of possibility, the voice of vision, the voice of his highest self rather than his programmed fears. He spent time each day programming his mind with thoughts of justice, equality, and inevitable change. He visualized success not just for himself but for the entire civil rights movement. He felt the emotions associated with freedom, dignity, and human rights. King's I Have a Dream speech wasn't just a political statement. It was the external expression of internal programming, the verbal manifestation of thoughts he had been thinking, beliefs he had been cultivating, visions he had been rehearsing in the privacy of his own mind. The power of that speech didn't come from his oratory skills alone. It came from the alignment between his conscious programming and his deepest convictions. When King stood before that crowd in Washington, D.C., he wasn't just sharing his dream with the world. He was demonstrating what happens when someone wins the inner game completely, when mental programming aligns perfectly with purpose, when the voice of possibility drowns out the voice of limitation so completely that anything becomes possible. The inner game isn't won through a single dramatic victory. It's won through countless small choices, countless moments when you decide which voice to listen to, countless opportunities to choose empowering thoughts over limiting thoughts, possibility over limitation, vision over fear. Every morning when you wake up, your mind begins generating thoughts automatically. These thoughts weren't consciously chosen by you. They're the product of whatever programming currently dominates your subconscious. If that programming serves your goals, those automatic thoughts will move you toward your dreams. If that programming limits you, those automatic thoughts will reinforce your limitations. But here's the key. You don't have to accept those automatic thoughts as truth. You don't have to let them determine your mood, your actions, or your beliefs about what's possible. You can consciously choose to replace limiting thoughts with empowering thoughts, fearful thoughts with courageous thoughts, doubtful thoughts with confident thoughts. This is the practice that separates those who master the inner game from those who remain victims of unconscious mental programming. This is the discipline that transforms dreamers into achievers, wishers into creators, followers into leaders. Colonel Sanders faced this challenge when he decided to franchise his chicken recipe at age 65. The voice of limitation had plenty of ammunition. He was too old, too broke, too inexperienced in the restaurant business to succeed. Every rejection seemed to confirm these doubts. Every obstacle seemed to prove that the voice of limitation was right. But Sanders had learned the secret of mental programming. Instead of accepting the automatic thoughts of limitation, he consciously replaced them with thoughts of success. He visualized restaurant owners saying yes to his franchise proposal. He imagined Kentucky Fried Chicken locations across the country. He felt the emotions associated with building a successful business empire. Sanders understood that the battle would be won or lost in his mind long before it was won or lost in the marketplace. He treated his mental programming as his most important business asset, spending time each day consciously directing his thoughts toward success rather than allowing them to drift toward limitation. When Sanders finally found success after over 1,000 rejections, he wasn't celebrating luck or good timing. He was celebrating the power of mental programming, the victory of possibility over limitation, the triumph of conscious thought direction over automatic mental habits. The voice of limitation will never stop trying to reclaim control of your mental programming. It will never give up, never surrender, never accept defeat gracefully. This voice exists to protect you from the discomfort of growth, from the uncertainty of change, from the vulnerability of pursuing something meaningful. But protection from growth is not protection at all. It's imprisonment disguised as safety. Every time you listen to the voice of limitation, you're not being realistic or practical or wise. You're being programmed for mediocrity. Every time you entertain thoughts that diminish your potential, you're not protecting yourself from disappointment. You're guaranteeing it. But every time you choose empowering thoughts over limiting thoughts, every time you consciously program your mind for success rather than accepting automatic programming for failure, every time you refuse to let fear masquerade as wisdom, you're reclaiming your power. You're taking back control of your mental programming. You're winning the inner game. If you're ready to declare victory over the voice of limitation and commit to daily mental programming for success, write "I am the programmer of my mind" in the comments below. The subconscious mind operates like the most sophisticated computer ever created, but it follows simple, predictable rules. Whatever you consistently focus on, it accepts as your desired reality and then works to make that reality your experience. Whatever emotions you regularly feel, it interprets as your preferred emotional state and then creates more circumstances that generate those emotions. Whatever beliefs you repeatedly affirm, it accepts as truth and then organizes your entire experience around confirming those beliefs. This is why people who constantly worry about failure tend to experience more failure. Their subconscious mind interprets worry as focus and creates more situations to worry about. This is why people who consistently think thoughts of scarcity tend to experience scarcity. Their subconscious mind organizes their perception and actions around confirming the reality of limitation, but the same principle works in reverse. People who consistently focus on success tend to experience more success. People who regularly feel emotions of gratitude and abundance tend to create more circumstances worthy of gratitude. People who repeatedly affirm their capability and potential tend to discover opportunities to express that capability and potential. This isn't mystical thinking or wishful fantasy. This is the predictable result of how the mind works when you understand its operating system and program it consciously rather than randomly. Albert Einstein understood this principle when he made his greatest discoveries. Einstein didn't stumble upon the theory of relativity through accident or luck. He programmed his mind to see connections that others missed, to think thoughts that others hadn't thought, to ask questions that others hadn't asked. Einstein spent hours each day in what he called thought experiments, consciously directing his mind toward problems he wanted to solve, visualizing solutions that didn't yet exist, feeling the emotions associated with breakthrough discoveries. He wasn't just daydreaming. He was systematically programming his subconscious mind to organize all its creative resources around generating insights that would revolutionize physics. When Einstein finally articulated his revolutionary theories, he wasn't sharing sudden inspirations. He was sharing the results of years of conscious mental programming, the fruit of disciplined thought direction, the outcome of treating his mind as his most important laboratory. Einstein's genius wasn't in his innate intelligence. His genius was in his understanding that intelligence could be directed, that creativity could be cultivated, that breakthrough thinking could be programmed through conscious mental discipline. The same potential exists within your mind. You have access to the same creative resources that Einstein used. You have the same capacity for breakthrough thinking, innovative solutions, and revolutionary insights. The only difference is whether you consciously program your mind to access these resources or allow random, undirected thoughts to determine your mental experience. Most people treat their minds like television sets, passively consuming whatever content happens to be broadcast, never realizing they have the power to change the channel, to select the programming, to determine what their consciousness experiences. They accept whatever thoughts randomly appear, as if those thoughts were news reports from reality, rather than recognizing them as programming that can be consciously chosen and directed. But when you take conscious control of your mental programming, when you deliberately choose thoughts that serve your vision rather than thoughts that sabotage it, when you systematically replace limiting beliefs with empowering beliefs, everything changes. Your perception changes, your emotions change, your actions change, your results change. Steve Jobs exemplified this principle when he revolutionized multiple industries through the power of visionary thinking. Jobs didn't accept the conventional wisdom about what was possible in computing, music, or communications. Instead, he programmed his mind to envision possibilities that didn't yet exist, to see solutions to problems that others hadn't even recognized. Jobs spent time each day visualizing products that didn't exist but that he believed should exist. He programmed his mind with thoughts of elegant design, intuitive functionality, and seamless user experience. He felt the emotions associated with creating products that would delight customers and change the world. When Jobs introduced revolutionary products like the iPhone, he wasn't sharing random inspirations or lucky guesses. He was sharing the manifestation of conscious mental programming, the result of systematically directing his thoughts toward innovation rather than accepting thoughts of limitation. Jobs understood that breakthrough innovation required breakthrough thinking, and breakthrough thinking required conscious programming of the mind. He treated his mental programming as seriously as he treated product development, recognizing that the quality of his thoughts would ultimately determine the quality of his creations. The battle for your mind is the battle for your life. Win the inner game, and external success becomes inevitable. Lose the inner game, and external circumstances will always control your experience. Master your mental programming and you master your destiny. Surrender your mental programming to random thoughts and inherited limitations, and you surrender your power to create the life you truly want. The choice is yours. The power is available. The moment is now. You can continue operating from the mental programming of your past, accepting thoughts that limit you as if they were facts rather than choices, allowing the voice of limitation to determine what's possible for your future. Or you can take conscious control of your mental programming, systematically replace limiting thoughts with empowering thoughts, and reprogram your subconscious mind for success rather than limitation. The inner game can be won. The voice of possibility can overrule the voice of limitation. Your mind can become your greatest ally rather than your greatest obstacle. But victory requires vigilance, discipline, and the willingness to treat your mental programming as the most important work you'll ever do, because it is. Every external achievement you'll ever accomplish, every goal you'll ever reach, every dream you'll ever realize will first be achieved in the territory of your mind. Win the battle in your head, and victory in your life becomes not just possible, but inevitable. The war for your mind is real. The stakes couldn't be higher. The enemy is formidable but not invincible, and you have everything you need to win. Take control of your thoughts. Program your mind consciously. Choose possibility over limitation. Select empowering beliefs over restricting beliefs. Direct your mental focus toward your vision rather than your fears. The inner game is winnable. Your mind is programmable. Your thoughts are choosable. Your mental programming is changeable. Master the inner game and you master everything else. The battle begins now. The victory is yours to claim.